A barista I barely knew grabbed my hand across the counter and begged me not to go home. I thought she was crazy. Then my phone started ringing, and it didn't stop for 3 hours. 47 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. And when I finally found out who was waiting at my apartment, I understood why she was so afraid. It was a Tuesday morning, just like any other Tuesday morning. I walked into my regular coffee shop, ordered my usual vanilla latte with oat milk, and waited at the counter while the barista made my drink. Her name was Yvette. She had short, dark hair and a small nose ring, and she always wrote something friendly on my cup. A smiley face, a little sun, sometimes a, "Have a great day." I didn't know her well, but I liked her. She remembered my order and always seemed genuinely happy to see me. But that morning, something was different. When Yvette handed me my cup, her hands were shaking. She kept glancing toward the window like she was expecting someone to walk through the door. Our eyes met, and I saw something in her face I had never seen before. Fear. I didn't notice the writing on the cup until I got to my car. I was about to take my first sip when I saw the black marker on the side. Not a smiley face. Not a friendly greeting. 7 words that made my stomach drop. Don't go home today. Stay in public. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what I was reading. Was this a joke? A mistake? I walked back into the coffee shop, cup in hand. Yvette was helping another customer, but when she saw me coming, her face went pale. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the cup. She leaned across the counter, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, just trust me. Don't go home." Before I could ask anything else, she reached across the counter and grabbed my hand. Her grip was tight, almost desperate. Her eyes locked onto mine. "I'm begging you." Another customer walked up behind me, and Yvette let go, her expression going neutral like nothing had happened. I walked out of that coffee shop more confused and unsettled than I had ever been in my life. I got in my car, and that's when my phone started ringing. An unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again and again. By the time I reached my office, I had 12 missed calls. By lunch, 31. By the time I left work that evening, the count was at 47, and I still had no idea what was waiting for me at home. To understand how I ended up in that situation, you need to know a little bit about my life before everything went wrong. Subscribe for more stories and tell me where you're watching from. My name is Sutton. I'm 25 years old, and I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city in Tennessee. I work as a graphic designer at a small marketing agency downtown. It's not my dream job, but I like the people, and the work keeps me busy. I moved into my apartment 2 years ago after breaking up with my college boyfriend. I wanted my own space, somewhere that was just mine, and I found it in a quiet building on a tree-lined street about 15 minutes from my office. My parents, Lorraine and Boyd, still live in the suburbs where I grew up, about an hour away. My mom calls me twice a week to check in and remind me to eat something other than takeout. My dad sends me funny videos he finds on the internet and doesn't understand why I've already seen most of them. My younger brother Micah is a senior in college and calls me every Sunday to complain about his roommates and ask if I can send him money for pizza. I always say no, and then I send it anyway. My best friend is a woman named Nadia. We've known each other since high school, and she's the kind of friend who will drop everything if you need her. She lives about 20 minutes from my apartment and works as a dental hygienist at a clinic near the mall. We try to get dinner together at least once a week, though lately our schedules have made that harder. I'm a creature of habit. Every weekday morning, I stop at the same coffee shop on my way to work. It's called the Copper Kettle, a cozy little place with exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture. I order the same thing every time, a medium vanilla latte with oat milk. The baristas know my order by heart. Yvette is one of them. She's maybe 22 or 23, and she's worked there for as long as I've been coming in. I don't know much about her life outside the coffee shop, but I always looked forward to seeing what she would write on my cup. About 2 months before this story begins, I made a decision that would change everything. I signed up for a dating app. I had been single for almost 2 years, and my mom kept asking when I was going to put myself out there again. So I downloaded the app, created a profile, and started swiping. Most of the matches went nowhere. Awkward conversations that fizzled out after a few messages. One guy who asked me to send him money for his sick grandmother. The usual disappointments. Then I matched with Gregor Hale. He was 30 years old, worked in real estate, and had the kind of smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. His profile said he loved hiking, trying new restaurants, and spending time with his nieces and nephews. He seemed normal. He seemed nice. He seemed too good to be true. We went on 4 dates over the course of 3 weeks. He was charming and attentive. He remembered small details about my life and brought them up later. He asked questions about my job, my family, my apartment. At the time, I thought he was just interested in getting to know me. I didn't realize he was gathering information. On the 3rd date, I started noticing things that made me uncomfortable. He asked what time I usually left for work in the morning. He wanted to know if I had a security system. He asked whether my neighbors were friendly or if they kept to themselves. I told myself he was just making conversation. On the 4th date, he showed up at a restaurant I hadn't told him about. I was meeting Nadia for dinner, and suddenly, there he was, walking through the door like it was a coincidence. He said he had been craving Italian food and just happened to pick that place. Nadia thought it was weird. I told her she was overreacting. That same night, when I said I needed to go home early, Gregor's mood changed in an instant. The warmth drained from his face. His voice went flat and cold. He asked why I was always running away from him. I told him I was tired and had an early meeting. He didn't say another word for the rest of the meal. I ended things the next day. I sent him a text saying I didn't think we were compatible and wished him well. He didn't respond. I thought that was the end of it. 3 days later, I saw his silver sedan parked outside my apartment building. He was just sitting there, staring at my window. When I walked toward the car to ask what he was doing, he drove away without a word. I told myself it was a coincidence. I told myself I was being paranoid. I convinced myself that I had nothing to worry about. That was 6 weeks before the morning Yvette wrote those 7 words on my coffee cup. 6 weeks of silence from Gregor. 6 weeks of convincing myself that everything was fine. I had no idea he had been watching me the entire time. I sat in my car outside the copper kettle for a long time, staring at the words on my cup. Don't go home today. Stay in public. My hands were trembling and I couldn't make them stop. I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Yvette had confused me with someone else. Maybe this was some kind of strange prank. But the look in her eyes when she grabbed my hand didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a warning. I needed answers. I walked back into the coffee shop and waited until Yvette finished with the customer at the register. When she saw me approaching, her face went pale. She glanced toward the back of the shop, then toward the window, like she was checking to make sure no one was watching. "Can we talk?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. She told her coworker she was taking a 5-minute break and led me to a small table in the corner, away from the other customers. "There was a man in here this morning," she said, keeping her voice low. "Before you came in, maybe 30 minutes before. He was asking about you. Asking about me how? He described you. Your hair, the jacket you always wear, the car you drive. He knew your order. He asked what time you usually come in." She paused, her fingers fidgeting with a napkin on the table. "He said he was your boyfriend. He wanted to surprise you." My stomach turned. "I don't have a boyfriend." "I know," Yvette said. "I've been making your coffee for over a year. You've never mentioned anyone. You've never come in with anyone. Something about him felt wrong. The way he talked about you. The way he smiled when he said your name. It gave me chills." "What did he look like?" "Tall, dark hair, nice clothes. He looked normal, you know? But his eyes were off, like he was playing a part." She had just described Gregor. "Did you tell him anything?" I asked. Yvette shook her head quickly. "I told him I didn't know you that well. I said you came in at random times and I couldn't predict when you'd show up. I don't think he believed me, but he left after that. He got in a silver car and drove away." "A silver car?" Gregor drove a silver sedan. The same car I had seen parked outside my apartment 6 weeks ago. "Why didn't you call the police?" I asked. "And tell them what? A man asked about a customer?" That's not a crime. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I didn't know what else to do. I figured if I wrote on your cup, you would at least be warned. You could decide what to do with the information. I thanked her and walked back to my car in a daze. I sat behind the wheel, trying to process everything she had told me. Gregor had been in the coffee shop that morning. He had been asking about my routine. He was planning something. That's when my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few seconds later, it rang again. Same number. I ignored it. It rang a third time, a fourth, a fifth. By the time I pulled into the parking lot at work, I had 12 missed calls from the same number. No voicemails, no texts, just call after call after call. I silenced my phone and tried to focus on work. I had a deadline for a client project, and I couldn't afford to be distracted. But every few minutes, my phone would light up with the same unknown number. I watched the missed call count climb throughout the day. 18 by 10 o'clock, 26 by noon, 31 by 2. Around 3 in the afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped outside and called Nadia. Something is wrong, I told her. I explained everything. The message on the cup, what Yvette had said about the man asking questions, the endless phone calls. Have you tried calling the number back? Nadia asked. No, I'm scared of what will happen if I do. Don't answer it, don't call it back. And whatever you do, don't go home tonight. You think I'm overreacting? Sutton, a barista you barely know, risked her job to warn you about this guy. Someone has called you over 30 times today without leaving a single message. No, I don't think you're overreacting. I think you need to take this seriously. By the time I left work at 5:30, my phone showed 47 missed calls from the same unknown number. 47. In one day. From someone who wouldn't leave a voicemail, wouldn't send a text, wouldn't identify themselves. I sat in my car in the parking lot, watching the sun begin to set, and made a decision. I wasn't going home. Not until I knew what was waiting for me there. I drove straight to Nadia's apartment. The whole way there, I kept checking my mirrors, looking for a silver sedan. Every time I saw one on the road, my heart jumped into my throat. I changed lanes more than I needed to. I took a longer route than necessary. By the time I pulled into Nadia's parking lot, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. Nadia was waiting for me at the door. She pulled me inside and wrapped me in a hug before I could say anything. Then she handed me a glass of wine and sat me down on her couch. Tell me everything again, she said, from the beginning. I told her about the message on the cup, about Yvette describing the man who had come into the coffee shop asking questions, about the silver car and how it matched Gregor's sedan, about the 47 phone calls from an unknown number. Saying it all out loud made it feel more real, more terrifying. We need to call the police, Nadia said. I nodded. Part of me had been hoping she would say that. I needed someone else to confirm that this was serious, that I wasn't just being paranoid. We called the non-emergency line together. I explained the situation to the officer who answered. He listened patiently and asked a few questions. When I finished, there was a pause on the other end. Ma'am, I understand this is frightening, he said, but at this point, no direct threat has been made. Calling someone repeatedly isn't illegal. Asking questions about someone at a coffee shop isn't illegal. Without evidence of a threat or criminal activity, there's not much we can do. So I'm supposed to just wait until he actually does something? I'm sorry. I know it's frustrating. My advice would be to document everything. Save the call logs. Write down what the barista told you. If the behavior continues or escalates, consider filing for a protective order. I thanked him and hung up, even though I wanted to scream. Nadia saw the look on my face and put her hand on my shoulder. This is ridiculous, I said. He's been stalking me for weeks and they can't do anything? They need evidence, Nadia said quietly. Real evidence. Something they can act on. I sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the wall. I thought about all the times I had dismissed the warning signs, the questions Gregor asked on our dates, the way he showed up at the restaurant, the car parked outside my building. I had explained every single one of those moments away because I didn't want to believe that something was wrong. But something was wrong, and waiting for the police to save me wasn't going to work. I want to see for myself, I said finally. Nadia stared at me. See what? My apartment. I want to know if he's there. Sutton, that's dangerous. I'm not going inside. I just want to drive by. If he's there, we call 911 with proof. If he's not, then maybe I really am overreacting and this whole thing is nothing. Nadia didn't look convinced, but she grabbed her keys anyway. Fine, but we're staying in the car and we're parking far away. And the second anything looks wrong, we're calling the police. We drove to my apartment building in her car, figuring Gregor wouldn't recognize it. The sun had set by the time we arrived, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the parking lot. Nadia parked across the street, behind a row of bushes that gave us a clear view of the building's entrance. At first, everything looked normal. A few cars in the lot, lights on in some of the windows, no sign of anything out of place. Then I saw it. A silver sedan parked in the visitor spot closest to the front door. The same spot where I had seen Gregor's car 6 weeks ago. That's his car, I whispered. Nadia leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. Are you sure? I was sure. I had memorized that car the night I saw it outside my building. Same make, same model, same color. And sitting inside, watching my apartment window, was Gregor. He was just sitting there in the driver's seat, his phone pressed to his ear. A moment later, my phone lit up in my lap. The same unknown number. He's calling you right now, Nadia said, her voice barely above a whisper, while staring at your apartment. Sutton, this is insane. I watched Gregor through the windshield, my heart pounding in my chest. He had been doing this for weeks, maybe longer, watching me, following me, learning my routine, waiting for the right moment. And tonight, he thought that moment had finally come. I dialed 911 with trembling fingers. The dispatcher answered on the second ring, and I forced myself to speak calmly, even though every nerve in my body was screaming. There's a man outside my apartment building who has been stalking me. He's sitting in his car right now, watching my window. He's called me 47 times today. I have a witness who can confirm he was asking about my routine this morning at a coffee shop. The dispatcher asked for my address and a description of the vehicle. I gave her everything. Silver sedan. The license plate number that Nadia read out loud while I held the phone. The visitor parking spot near the front entrance. The dispatcher told us to stay in our vehicle and keep our doors locked. Officers were being sent to the location. They're on their way, I told Nadia after hanging up. We sat in tense silence, watching Gregor through the windshield. He hadn't moved. He was still sitting in his car, phone pressed to his ear, staring up at my apartment like he had all the time in the world. Every few minutes, my phone would light up with another call from the unknown number. I let each one go to voicemail. Then something changed. Gregor put down his phone and opened his car door. He stepped out onto the pavement and stood there for a moment, stretching his arms like he was preparing for something. Then he walked toward the entrance of my building. What is he doing? Nadia whispered. We watched as he approached the front door. It was a secure building. You needed a key fob or someone to buzz you in. Gregor didn't have either, but he stood at the call box and started pressing buttons, one after another after another. He was trying to get someone to let him in without knowing who he was. A few seconds later, the door clicked open. Someone had buzzed him in without checking. He's inside, I said, my voice shaking. He's in my building. I wanted to run. I wanted to drive away and never look back. But I also knew that if I left now, Gregor would realize I wasn't home. He would disappear before the police arrived, and this whole nightmare would start over again. Red and blue lights appeared at the end of the street. 2 patrol cars turned into the parking lot, their sirens off, but their lights flashing. I jumped out of Nadia's car and ran toward the officers, waving my arms. He just went inside, I told them. The man I called about. He's in my building right now. The officers moved quickly. One stayed with me while the other 2 entered the building. I stood on the sidewalk, hugging myself against the cold, watching the front door and praying they would find him before he found my apartment. The minutes stretched like hours. Then the door opened and the officers emerged. Between them, hands cuffed behind his back, was Gregor. He wasn't struggling. He wasn't shouting. He walked calmly, almost casually, like this was just a minor inconvenience. But when his eyes found me standing on the sidewalk, his expression shifted. A small smile crept across his face. It wasn't the charming smile I remembered from our dates. It was something else entirely, something cold and possessive. "We found him outside your apartment door," one of the officers told me. "He was trying to pick the lock with a credit card." My stomach dropped. "There's more," the officer continued. "We searched his vehicle. He had a bag in the trunk. They showed me what was inside. Zip ties, duct tape, a hunting knife with a 6-inch blade, and photographs. Dozens of photographs of me, walking to my car, entering the copper kettle, standing at my apartment window. Some of them were taken from far away, with a zoom lens. Others were taken close up, when I hadn't even known anyone was nearby. He had been watching me for weeks, maybe longer, and tonight, he had planned to do something with all that preparation. As the officers led Gregor toward the patrol car, he looked at me one more time. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but the words made my blood freeze. "This isn't over. You can't hide from me forever." An officer pushed his head down and put him in the back of the car. The door slammed shut. I watched the patrol car pull away, taking Gregor with it, and finally let myself breathe. Nadia was beside me, her arm around my shoulders. "It's over," she said. "He's gone." I wanted to believe her, but I could still see his smile. I could still hear his voice, and I knew that until he was locked away for good, I would never truly feel safe. Gregor was denied bail the next morning. The judge took one look at the contents of that duffel bag and decided he was too dangerous to release. The zip ties, the duct tape, the knife, the photographs. It painted a picture that no lawyer could explain away. He sat in county jail for 3 months waiting for his trial, and I spent every one of those days looking over my shoulder. The investigation revealed things I never knew. Gregor had done this before. 2 other women in 2 different cities had filed complaints against him over the past 5 years. Both had dated him briefly, just like me. Both had tried to end things, just like me. And both had experienced the same pattern of surveillance and harassment. One of them had moved to a different state to get away from him. The other had dropped her complaint because she was too scared to testify. My case gave prosecutors enough evidence to finally hold him accountable. The trial lasted 4 days. I had to sit in that courtroom and watch Gregor's lawyer try to paint him as a misunderstood romantic who had simply been too persistent. He called it a misunderstanding. He said Gregor just wanted to talk, to explain himself, to win me back. But the photographs told a different story. The tools in his bag told a different story. 47 phone calls in 1 day told a different story. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: stalking, attempted breaking and entering, possession of burglary tools with intent to commit a crime. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison and issued a lifetime restraining order. When the verdict was read, Gregor didn't react. He just stared at me with that same cold smile, like he was already planning what he would do when he got out. I try not to think about that. A week after the arrest, I went back to the copper kettle. I needed to thank Yvette in person for what she had done. When I walked through the door, she was behind the counter making someone's latte. She looked up and saw me, and her whole face changed. Relief flooded her expression. "You're okay," she said. "I've been so worried." I hugged her right there in front of everyone. I didn't care who was watching. "You saved my life," I told her. "I don't know how I can ever repay you." She shook her head. "I just did what anyone should do. Something about him scared me. I couldn't let you walk into that without at least trying to warn you." I learned later that Yvette's older sister had been in an abusive relationship years ago. That experience had taught her to recognize the warning signs that most people miss. She told me she almost didn't write on my cup. She almost convinced herself she was being paranoid, but something told her to trust her gut. "Thank God you did," I said. Yvette and I became real friends after that. We get coffee together now, at a different shop where neither of us has to work. She's one of the few people who truly understands what I went through. I moved to a new apartment a month after the trial, a building with better security, cameras in the hallways, a doorman who checks IDs. My parents helped me move, and my mom cried when she saw the new locks I had installed on every door and window. I started seeing a therapist who specializes in trauma. Some weeks are harder than others. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still check my mirrors when I drive. I still flinch when my phone rings from an unknown number. But I'm healing. Slowly, day by day, I'm finding my way back to myself. I started sharing my story online, in forums and support groups for women who have experienced stalking. I wanted other people to know that their fear is valid, that they should never feel crazy for trusting their instincts, that sometimes the only warning you get comes from a stranger who barely knows your name but cares enough to try. That Tuesday morning taught me something I will carry with me forever. Danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it wears a charming smile and asks you questions about your routine. Sometimes the only thing standing between you and something terrible is one person who refuses to look away. Yvette was that person for me. A barista I barely knew who wrote 7 words on a coffee cup and changed the entire course of my life. She had no obligation to get involved. She could have stayed silent and let me walk into whatever Gregor had planned, but she chose to speak up. She chose to be brave. And because she did, I'm still here. A stranger saved my life with a message written in black marker. And I will never stop being grateful. If you want more stories, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from.